In this quick start video tutorial, I am going to show you how easy it is to set up video analytics. There are 5 topics to cover and it takes less than 5 minutes to set up. The 5 topics that I will cover are loading up the encoder display, describing the zones and rules interface, talking about the difference between VCA presence and VCA surveillance, the object tracker, and finally examples on applying rules. So the first thing I'm going to do is start IPadmin tool, which automatically discovers all the network devices that I can connect to. Next I'm going to connect to a device by selecting the device, right click and then selecting Web View, and this will bring up Internet Explorer along with a website security error to which I can ignore by clicking on the continue link, and this will take me to the ordinary encoder display where I can view live video. By default, video analytics is not enabled, and so in order to enable it, you need to click on Setup, select the VCA link, and then click on the Enable and Disable link, and change the VCA status from off to on, and click Apply. Wait for a few moments. As you will notice, you will see a list of new features added to this menu. Now in order to go back to the encoder display, you need to click on the View link. The live video shows a typical 4-way stop traffic junction in the USA, with objects coming in and out from different locations. Now in order to set up video analytics, I am going to click on the Setup link, click on the VCA link, and finally click on the Zones and Rules link, which will then take me to the Zones and Rules interface. On the Zones and Rules interface, the first thing you will notice is the tracking display window, which shows all moving and stationary targets that are currently being tracked by the engine. Now if I double click on the tracking display window and create a zone like so, then if you take a look at the right hand side of the page, you will notice the Properties Inspector. The Properties Inspector allows the user to assign rules to zones like the one I've just created. The bottom of the page shows the event history, which shows all the history of objects that have triggered rules and generated alarms. Now going back to the Properties Inspector, there are 2 levels of video analytic products: VCA Presence and VCA Surveillance. VCA Presence continually tracks moving and stationary targets and generates real-time alerts of object present in multiple overlapping detection zones. VCA Surveillance is similar, but it also includes a full set of additional filters, which include Enter, Exit, Appear, Disappear, Stopped, Dwell, Direction Filter, Speed Filter, and the Object Class Filter. Those of you who have VCA Presence will have access to the Presence rule, whereas those of you who have VCA Surveillance will have access to the full set of rule-based filters, as well as the Presence rule. For VCA Surveillance, you need to calibrate the camera in order to make use of the object speed and class filters, which are not shown here initially. Camera calibration is covered in a separate video tutorial. Going back to the tracking display, at the core of video analytics is an advanced object tracking engine that continually tracks moving and stationary targets. Each object that is being tracked by the tracking engine is highlighted with a yellow bounding box. If an object trips a detection rule, the bounding box turns red. Each object also has a trail that indicates the path the object has taken. Now by examining how the ends of the trails intersect a zone, it is possible to configure rules to generate events for a wide range of detection scenarios. In this next example, I am now going to show you how to apply the object presence rule to a zone. The first thing to do is to double click on the tracking display window and create a zone like so. Let's give this zone a name. Let's call it red zone. And as you will notice, by default the presence tab is ticked, but this does not mean that the presence rule is applied yet. In order to apply it, click on the Apply button. And as you will notice, every time an object is present inside the red zone, this will trigger the rule and raise an alarm. And this is then recorded in the event history, like so. So for example, in the event history, you can see that the object presence rule has been triggered in the red zone along with the times of the event. Another thing to notice also is that when an object is present in the red zone, the bounding box changes from yellow to red. So all objects that have triggered a rule are displayed in red, whereas all objects that have not triggered a rule remain yellow. Sometimes when an object passes through the edge of the zone, it does not always trigger the rule. And the reason behind this is because its trail hasn't crossed the detection zone. Let's take a look at a few examples. Here is an example of an object that is present in the zone, and notice how its trail passes through the zone, and this has been recorded. Here is another object that is present, but notice how its trail just misses the corner of the zone, and so this is not recorded. So you can always predict if a rule will work by seeing if the trails pass through the zones correctly. The next set of examples apply to those that have bought the VCA surveillance license. In this next example, I will show you how to apply the object stopped rule to a zone. The first thing to do is to double click on the tracking display window and create a zone like so. Let's add some nodes on the edges to make the shape look more accurate. Nodes are added by double clicking on the polygon edge. Let's give this zone a name. Let's call it red zone. Then click on the stopped filter, click on the plus sign and type in, for example, 2 seconds and click apply. As you will notice, every time an object has stopped for more than 2 seconds in the red zone, then this will trigger the rule and raise an alarm. This is then recorded in the event history, like so. In this next example, I will show you how to apply the direction filter rule to a line, and then how to apply the object counter to it. The first thing to do is to right-click on the tracking display window and select Zone Stroke Line, and then select Create Line. And create a line like so. Let's change the default name and call it Red Line. And then click on the direction filter and configure the main direction like so, and also configure the acceptance angle by moving the small arrows like so. Then right click on the tracking display window, click on counter, add counter. Let's give this counter a name, let's call it objects turning left. And then click on the increment and apply it to our red line, which has the direction filter set. Click apply. And as you will notice, every time an object trail crosses the detection line within the configured direction and acceptance angle, it will trigger the rule and raise an alarm. This is then recorded in the event history, like so. Also, because we connected the counter to the red line events, the counter counts the vehicles turning left. Here is a final example showing a full setup. Please note that the camera has been previously calibrated. Notice the use of overlapping zones which don't cause any problems. You can see a green line with the direction filter applied to show cars entering the parking garage. An object counter has been applied to the green line to count the number of objects entering. You can see a blue line with the direction filter applied to show cars exiting the parking garage and turning right. An object counter has been applied to the blue line to count the number of objects exiting. There is a green zone with the appear rule applied. This triggers an object exiting the garage because their trails appear inside the zone. There is a yellow zone with the presence rule applied to detect people crossing the road. Notice that the person filter has been applied so that only people are detected. You can see an orange zone with the stopped rule and vehicle filter applied that detects cars stopping at the junction for more than 2 seconds. You can see a red zone with the speed filter applied to detect cars traveling in a specific speed boundary, for example between 10 and 50. You can see an aqua zone that uses the dwell filter to detect pedestrians taking more than 2 seconds to come along the path and step off the sidewalk. The large aqua zone in the center is being used to measure the net number of objects in the center of the junction at any one time. It uses the presence filter and occupancy counter to do this. And lastly, if you right-click on the tracking window, select Display, you can choose various diagnostic information for the objects, including the segmentation blobs and object properties such as height, area, speed, and classification. So you can see the power of video analytics and how useful it can be in different scenarios.